Today's subject is facets of life. There could be various facets or types of lives. However, for the sake of a clear analysis, they can be divided into two main heads, one spiritual and the other secular. In the spiritual life, there are three distinct grades. In the first, there are the Vedic rishis or the prophets and incarnations like the Buddha, Jesus, and Ramakrishna, who have a very clear concept of a good life and whose lives are so grand and artistically lived that we are astonished. We can only marvel at the exquisite beauty, subtlety, and the delicate nuances of those lives. We can learn the fine art of living from them, but cannot truly imitate them. They remain beyond all comparison. Then there is the next grade of humanity which aspires for a non material, non mundane spiritual goal. This could be monastic as well as lay. The author of the Christian classic, The Cloud of Unknowing, classifies the Christian life into four types: the common, the special, the solitary or contemplative, and the perfect. The common life is of the baptized lay Christians. The special ones are those who take up spiritual life in earnest by renouncing the world for Christ, but are active. The solitary are the contemplatives engaged solely in meditation on God. And finally, there are those rare few who attain perfection and get united with God. Thus, the concept of a good life, even for those who are spiritual, as it evolves from the man of God downwards or from the secular life upwards, assumes so many hues and colors. The third grade is of those who aspire only for material advancement and excellence. These are poets, writers, builders, doctors, managers, teachers, and professors, and various professionals. Nay, this group includes a housewife, a mother, a daughter, and the concept of a good life must cover all these categories. Life has a second dimension, which we erroneously designate as secular as compared to the sacred. Erroneously, because on deeper analysis, there is no difference between the sacred and the secular. The difference is caused by one's attitude. Even an apparently secular life can be a deeply sacred one, and vice versa. This so called secular life, too, has its charm, verity, beauty, and its own science and art of living. A housewife performing her daily course, and student studying for his examination, a teacher engaged in teaching, a doctor treating the patient, and a patient suffering from disease, all live their lives well or ill. They can convert their life into a charming drama or an ugly sojourn. And there is such a variety of human beings with diverse professions, duties, responsibilities, aptitudes, and likes and dislikes that it is almost impossible to form a clear or uniform concept of a good life or to give a clear cut universal guideline of how to live the life. For example, what will make the life of a patient beautiful will be very much different from what is needed for a soldier. And yet, all religions of the world, the ancient major religions as well as the modern neo religions, have attempted to provide a clear concept of a good life and guidelines for right living for people of all stations of life and in various stages of development. Hinduism, for example, had classified society into four varnas and four ashramas and had put before them the concept of our purusharthas or values to be pursued. Jainism too has a fourfold division of people with sets of rules and regulations for each one of them. If an individual, temperamentally a householder, were to pursue the values of a monk and vice versa, the resultant picture of the life would be unseemly, to say the least. However, today there is hardly any true division into caste and class. Globalization has destroyed all differences of lifestyles, values, and social divisions. New castes, administrator, laborer, worker, doctor, engineer, technician, politician have arisen. One cannot, therefore, have the old values and guidelines for right living and must turn to newer models like Sri Ramakrishna and his disciples and the Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi. They were rooted in the past and yet modern in their approach. Their life and teachings from the new Shrutis and Smritis and provide guidelines for the right living for the new age. An individual's life is intimately associated with that of the world around. He is a member of the family and the society in which he lives and functions as a citizen of the nation. He acts and interacts with others. He influences the world and is influenced by it. Human life, therefore, cannot be lived or studied in isolation. The individual must fulfill his destiny as well as his social commitments, and a lot of skill is required to accomplish both. Such a life, lived in perfect harmony within and without, is indeed one of the rarest and most beautiful things to behold. There is yet another facet of life which cannot be ignored. There are innumerable lives that are wasted and remain unfulfilled and frustrated. In the unjust world, a large mass of people is denied even the right to live. Almost 40% of the world's population today is struggling for survival. What to talk of living an artistic life? If life is represented by the flame of a lamp, then the shadow which always accompanies it represents this unfortunate, ugly aspect of life: poverty, illiteracy, exploitation, ruthless deprivation of human rights, etc., are maladies mostly man-made. Humankind had, from the prehistoric era, faced all sorts of challenges with ample skill and dexterity. Yet, at the height of human civilization, man today seems to lose his way. In spite of all the achievements through the ages, many human beings live not as humans but as animals, if not even worse. While we discuss the art of living, we must not close our eyes to this unhappy, unholy, ugly aspect of human life, which is a blot on the whole human race. Let it not be understood that a right or healthy and sane living means only following certain personal values or social ethical codes or striving for moksha. Swami Vivekananda has gone to the extent of admonishing one of the disciples that he would go to hell if he tried only for his personal salvation. We have wasted so many past lives in frivolous pursuits. Let us waste this one for the upliftment of the masses. Nothing can add greater charm, beauty, and sublimity to a life than dedicating it for the good of those who badly need help. They only live who live for others. Rest are more dead than alive, said Swami Vivekananda. If we, the rich, the learned, the risen, the healthy, and the pious, could feel a sense of shame and remorse at the plight of these gods, the poor, the ignorant, the downtrodden, the sick, the drunkard, the wicked, and can realize that in some form or other we too are responsible for degrading the embodiments of God to the state of beasts, we shall be adding a sublimer hue to our own lives. There is a new melody which is afflicting the people of the developed countries, the melody of affluence. Their life is overcrowded with possessions, enjoyments, activities, and information. The consumeristic world is supplying too much of ready-made objects, ideas, and activities which they are not able to digest. Their souls are being choked by too much of the mundane. If a large mass of humanity today is struggling for survival and is steeped in poverty and ignorance, an equally large section is struggling for survival of a different type. These people are struggling to maintain their possessions, and a high standard of living. They are living in a technological world with a mad rush for what they themselves don't know. They don't have leisure, rest, and even the great leveler sleep eludes them. Such people too fail to get a clear concept of a good life or live it. Today, the gap between the developed and the underdeveloped countries and the people residing in them is increasing. Wisely, had our ancient teachers advised us to follow the middle path. These two extremes are aberrations, and the art of living lies in avoiding extremes and following the middle path. For the moderners, both rich and the poor, Sri Ramakrishna has shown how to live. He was born in a poor family and lived throughout his life as a poor man. Though he had rich disciples and caretakers, he never cared for riches. Outwardly poor, he was inwardly rich, a monarch in the spiritual realm and the great master of the internal world. How charming was the life of this bearded, plainly dressed rustic. How many scholars, great men, rich and honorable people of his times were charmed by his exquisitely beautiful life. Apart from religious concepts of a good life, there have also been non-religious thinkers, savants, and specialists in different fields of life. Scientists, economists, politicians, management gurus who have tried to provide useful guidelines. Now, the question is, can there not be some general hints for living a good life which could be useful for all? This question is very difficult to answer because there is a large spectrum of values for right living. Let us go through some of the most prominent ones for contemplation. Buddhism has advocated the 5 cardinal values, the Panchasila, that is non-injury, truthfulness, non-stealing, chastity, and not taking intoxicants. Yoga Sutra of Patanjali recommend the 5 yamas, that is ahimsa, truth, non-stealing, chastity, non-possessiveness. These are the universal values applicable at all times and under all circumstances to all human beings if they want to live rightly. Of course, exceptions and modifications must be made according to the need of the times, the individual and specific situations. It may be easier for some whose basic needs are fulfilled, while some others struggling for survival may have to wait for some time more to put them into practice. Take for example Sri Ramakrishna's central teaching. The goal of life is God realization and the means intense earning and renunciation of lust and greed. Can this be applicable to everyone in the world? No. Even Sri Ramakrishna qualifies it saying religion is not for the hungry. Swami Vivekananda gives us the twin motto: strive for one's own salvation and for the welfare of the world. This twin guideline for right living is also found in the 2 commandments of Jesus Christ. Love thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and love thy neighbor as thyself. But, as we have already said, there is a vast mass of human beings who are not in a position to love God with all their heart or to love their neighbor as themselves. They are merely struggling to survive. They just need support, help, and consolation. Luckily, religion is able to provide that too. Holy Mother has assured, do what little you can, rest I shall do. Always remember that you have a mother. For weaklings, surrender is the only right way of life. This constant remembrance of the Divine Mother adds a lot of beauty to an apparently useless or helpless life. There is one value, however, which could indeed prove extremely useful for almost every individual in any situation: faith. Faith in a superhuman controlling agency, call it God or truth or by any other name. Equally valid is faith in one's own self, the higher self, written with a capital S. One can disbelieve God, but none can deny oneself. The first step, then, towards living a good life can be taken if we gain faith and strengthen it. The rest of the colors of an art-filled life would be added as this faith starts manifesting. Paradoxically, there is a charm in a life lived without an outline or guideline. Is not a child's unsophisticated life the most beautiful? Is there no beauty in the life of the trees and plants, in the way animals, birds, and insects live? Is not nature the most beautiful? There is beauty in mistakes and failures, in slips and falls. For they are great teachers, and every time we rise from such falls, we add further charm to our life. Life continues to remain an open book, a book of innumerable line drawings in which we have to fill colors. Even an imperfectly colored design adds one more leaf to the book of life. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.